The Institute for Statecraft is an organisation which looks at issues of governance, of how to improve governance in modern societies so that they can keep pace with the changing world. And recently we've been looking particularly at the issues of disinformation and malign influence, because this is one of the biggest threats to democracy at the current time. The Integrity Initiative is the main programme that the Institute runs for addressing this issue of disinformation and malign influence. It's an educational programme where we seek to educate and inform policymakers and decision makers so that they understand the nature of the problem and can better track, expose and counter this disinformation wherever it comes from. The Integrity Initiative programme, it actually addresses the problem in all European countries. We have across Europe networks, we call them clusters, of people who understand the issue and have agreed voluntarily to band themselves together in order to tackle the issue in their own country and to share information between each country on the problems, on how to tackle them, and on how to improve their own governmental capacity to deal with them. The Integrity Initiative programme is really important right at this moment because the threat from disinformation and malign influence is increasing, whether that comes from Russia or whether it comes from jihadist organisations like Daesh targeting specific elements of the population in different European countries. The other aspect of its importance is that because the world's changed so quickly, because our governmental institutions have not been able to adapt sufficiently to keep pace with the new challenges to democracy, they are not able in democratic states to generate the kind of defences necessary to protect themselves and to protect our societies from disinformation. And that's why institutes like the Institute for Statecraft, non-governmental organisations run by specialists without governmental direction, are so important, because they can generate from the grassroots a movement of people. They can educate people more effectively. They can respond more rapidly to the kind of informational, disinformational threat we're now facing. Disinformation is not the only issue that the Institute addresses, of course. We work a lot with our ethnic communities in the UK to improve their integration into the societal mainstream. We have a programme looking at reform of policing, another programme looking at prison reform, another at health service reform. All elements of governance which need serious addressing. These programmes are not just run in the UK, or not specifically run in the UK. We're working in Latin America, for example. We're working in North Africa and the Middle East, and working, of course, across Europe, and particularly in Central and Eastern Europe. Of course, the Institute doesn't just deal with disinformation issues. We work on a whole range of topics. So, for example, we work on prison reform in Latin America. We're working on dealing with the whole problems of radicalisation in the Middle East and North Africa. We're looking at health service reform both in the UK and in several countries abroad. To understand why disinformation is such a big issue nowadays, we have to understand that the whole nature of conflict in the 21st century is changing. Whereas if you think of the 20th century, the main form of combat, of conflict which we're aware of was World War. In the current situation, it's a new kind of warfare, a new kind of conflict, a new kind of competition in which everything becomes a weapon. Information, energy supplies, cyber attack, which everyone's aware of, corruption itself, financial investment, All of these things are now weapons in modern conflict between states and sub-state actors like Daesh. And disinformation is the issue which unites all the other weapons of this conflict and which gives them a third dimension. Over the last month or so, we've had a serious problem. We have been attacked by organisations which have exposed a lot of our emails and papers onto the web. And we've been wondering, of course, why this is, and the answer seems to me to be clear. It's because we have been being so effective with our Integrity Initiative programme exposing disinformation. So we've become a threat to someone's operation against democracy, and they're trying to take us down, and we have simply not got to let that happen. We've got to fight back. We have to win this one, because if we don't, democracy will be undermined. And we can win this by upping our game, by strengthening our efforts, by getting more support to tackle the problem in all of those countries of Europe where disinformation is a growing threat to democracy. This is not a problem that's going to go away. This is an issue which is going to become more and more important, more and more as a threat as the 21st century moves on. And it's for that reason that we have to develop what we're doing. We have to grow it. We have to educate people to understand it, to understand the significance of disinformation and of the attack on our democratic institutions, the efforts to undermine our very concept of democracy, to undermine the very understanding of truth, to undermine our values. Only if we can educate people in this, only if we can expose the attacks on us, can we enable our societies, our democracies, to fight back, to defend themselves and to prevail.